Hi guys, welcome to the Reinventing After 40 channel. My name is Elsie, your reinvention buddy. If this is your first time, the whole essence of this channel is to walk with you through your reinvention process, be it in one area of your life or your life as a whole. And the truth be told, we should always be trying to reinvent ourselves. We're never quite there. You set a milestone, you get there, you try to be better, to do better. So if this is your first time, please like this video, please subscribe to this channel. If you're a return subscriber, please like this video. That's like the lifeline of this channel and why we do what we do, and it encourages us to do even better. So yes, today, the topic that we will be discussing, I think, is very integral. It's a really important part of reinventing yourself. At this point in time of our lives where we're at, we're probably caught in the cycle of being providers or doing stuff for other people. And so this topic addresses something that is an issue. And a lot of people, we actually have come to a point of maybe knowing that it's an issue, but we don't know how to go about correcting this. And so the essence of this video today is to first draw our attention to this thing, and then I would like you to stick around towards the end of this video. We'll be sharing tips on how to get to that point where you achieve the process of prioritizing yourself. So the topic of today is putting yourself first, prioritizing yourself. Yes. Ooh, if you are like me, if you're a parent or at the age where you're a provider, you're taking care of other people. At this age, we have aged parents. We're almost always putting ourselves last. There's just always something or someone that needs our attention more than we do. So, growing up, we're wired to believe that being selfless was an act of putting yourself last and putting everyone around you or the people that you love before you, right? I'm sure you can relate. And so you can imagine the horror when this motivational speaker started to talk about putting yourself first. Self-love. For me, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not gospel. A righteous indignation arose within me, and I'm like, I don't agree with that. If you love someone, how do you show someone that you love someone if you're not putting them first? It was alien to me, and hopefully a lot of you watching me, you can relate to this. So the struggle continued. After getting upset about thinking these people don't know what they're talking about, we probably continued in that same rigmarole of doing what we thought best, which is putting yourself last, putting yourself at the end of the lineup. And just, especially as a parent, you think literally to yourself, it's on me to put my kids first. It's on me to do what they need at the expense a lot of times of maybe burning yourself out. And the thing is, we get to the end of a rope somewhere at some point in time when you find yourself where, if you, like me, you're asked the question, who are you? What do you like? The question hits you, and in the bid to answer it, you find that you can only describe yourself through the lens of someone else's camera or as a part of another person's story. And you might say, what do I mean? I found that the most comfortable way to describe myself, or the first thing that came to mind when I was asked pertinent questions like that, would be, oh, I'm a mother, or some people, I'm a wife. Some people, it's under the guise of their jobs. There was this interview I watched, this well-achieved woman, and how she introduced herself at the beginning was, I'm a wife, a mother, before she could get to who she was. And I'm talking about someone who was an achiever, a high flyer. So I don't know if it's the society, I don't know if it's our mindset, but we have somehow become wired to be a part of another person's story simply because that's what we do. That's who we are. We're not lying. This is the identity that we have created for ourselves as a part of another person's story. And it makes you realize that you actually have lost a part of yourself, or a really large part of yourself. For me, it was getting to the point where I realized that I didn't even know who I was anymore, aside of being a part of my children's story, or there was just always something and someone else to use to describe who I was or to validate myself. And this is coming from me, who I think I'm a strong woman. I'm not a walkover, right? So I was quite amazed or at the discovery of realizing that I had lost myself in all of that bid to be something for other people, which is not a bad thing, But I think what it is essentially is growing up, the society made us believe that when you put yourself first, you are being selfish. I mean, and it's a hot wiring. We grew up thinking, no, you have to put another person first. It's most especially hard for you to even wrap your head around putting yourself first when it comes to your children, especially when they're maybe really little toddlers. These are people who need you. So we are constantly putting them first, and we do a lot of damage to ourselves in that process. And for some people, and with some people who maybe are not opportuned to be confronted with a mind-juggling question like that, we continue in that self-sacrificing place to the people that we love, which is the right thing to do, till we get to a point where the people that we have continued to sacrifice for, they grow up, they fly the nest, they become independent, which is, that's the order of life. Really, in essence, that's what we pray for, that's what we want. But at that point in time, when they leave, this is by no means saying that they do not love you anymore, they do not need you anymore, but you have taught them life lessons, you have taught them to be strong, they have gained independence. Then you, unfortunately, you find yourself at a place of despair. You don't know what to do with yourself anymore because you have lived your life for others. And there are different emotions or feelings or scenarios that arise from this sort of thing. For some people, you start to get a bit bitter. You start to think, oh, and then when they didn't need me anymore, they just cast me to the side, which honestly might not be the case, or a lot of times it's not the case, really. They get busy with their lives, which you were supposed to be doing, remember? But hey, okay, or you become that needy person who, because you're used to living for these people, and now they are in the real world out there confronting their own life, but you are holding on to them. And like all of us, they react or they snap or they do something. It almost seems like if you don't get a grasp of it now, it just never ends up, right. It almost always ends up in tears or with negative emotions. So all of that good deed that you have done can, if you're not careful, turn out to be something negative, which is not supposed to be, but because you didn't know better or you didn't know how. Some people, without a solution or a guide to how to do it, we kind of like always shut it out. We say to ourselves, when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. Unfortunately, by the time you get to that bridge, there's nothing to go back to and you're lost. It's not a good place to be. It's something that we must address now. This is why we're having this conversation. This is why we're trying to reinvent ourselves. Some are farther ahead than others in the process of learning how to put themselves first. Some got the memo early and they've run with it. Some are picking up. Some don't even know where to start. And that's why we're here. And I'm hoping that in the comment section, we would all bring our ideas and just input, put in your 2 cents. Let's discuss your story or your own adventures with self-sacrificing and learning how to prioritize yourself, because that's a must do. And I'm aware that the challenge a lot of times why we can't progress or move forward beyond this point is because somewhere in your head you're thinking, that's selfish. How can I spend on myself when there's so many bills to be paid, right? So this is us shedding the light on why it's different from being selfish and why it's actually important, not just for you, but for your loved ones, for you to learn how to prioritize yourself. So I'm just going to share my story and tell you the things that I found out in the journey of learning how to put myself first. And honestly, truth be told, I think I'm still in the baby steps stage of learning to put myself first. But these are the things I've realized and that have helped me along the decision, because it's one thing to actually know, but it's another thing to take the first step of learning that you must do it and finding the strength. You need strength to be able to decide to do it, So these are the things that I found out on my journey. So the first thing I found out is that putting yourself first means that you take into account your needs and your feelings alongside the needs and the feelings of others. And at the end of the day, when you make your decisions or you take actions, you do what is best for you without causing any harm to another person. Taking the best decision for yourself can be hard. And some people say, oh, is that not selfish? No, that's not selfish. A selfish person thinks about only themselves without putting into consideration another person. But you learning to put yourself first is to consider other people alongside yourself. And in the early stages, it's going to be an assignment for you to even remember to put yourself in the equation. So you are not a selfish person. You're learning how to be a better version of yourself. So that's what I found out. I found out that you need to put yourself into consideration so that you do not develop unconsciously resentment or become burnt out in the process of self-sacrificing, which happens a lot of times to the best of us. And then the next thing that I discovered in this journey was it is solely your responsibility to take care of your mental, your emotional, your spiritual well-being. It is not the job for another person. It isn't. It is your responsibility to do that for yourself. And in the process of trying to achieve that, you will need to pay attention to you. So once you realize that it is your duty to take care of yourself, then you realize that you need to create time and resources to be able to achieve that. The third thing I learned is born from a proverb: you cannot pour from an empty cup. I heard that a lot growing up and I didn't understand what it meant. But basically, you get to a point where you're pouring and pouring and pouring. If you do not stop to replenish and to refill, there's nothing left to pour out. And that leads to a burnout or leads to a mental or physical exhaustion. Bottom line is you need to stop to replenish yourself. You need to take breaks and time out to fill yourself up to be able to pour out, even for your children. A lot of times, a lot of children have lost their parents prematurely because they didn't stop to look after themselves. And eventually, you take away from that child the opportunity and the blessing of having you for, a long period of time because you were not stopping to take care of yourself. You were not doing your medical checkups. You were not exercising. You thought you were doing the best for that child, but eventually you ended up breaking the heart of that child or those children because you were not doing what you needed to do or what was right for you, and in other words, in essence, for them. And so all that being said, we're getting to the good stuff. How can we learn the art of prioritizing ourselves? Because as I said, it's important and it's something that for a lot of us we have to learn. We have to relearn what we know, out with the old, in with the new. So what are the steps that we can take to start prioritizing ourselves? I would say the first thing that we must learn how to do is check in with yourself regularly. We need to check in with ourselves because we're going through so much regularly. Life happens. We're processing a million of thoughts daily. We have different encounters and life scenarios that eat away at us, sometimes little by little. But you know what they say about little by little. Little drops make a mighty ocean. And sometimes you just take encounters that take out a chunk of who we are. And if we do not stop, take a step back and process what we are going through, to check in with yourself to say, am I okay? Am I coping? And if the answer is yes, oh, well done, you have taken time out to process. You didn't sweep it under the carpet. But a lot of times, you might realize that the answer is no, I'm actually not coping. And then you realize something needs to be done about the fact that you're not coping. So whether you choose to sweep the realization of, okay, I'm not coping under the carpet, or you choose to address it. A reasonable, sensible, self-loving person would see the need to address the fact that I am not coping in this scenario or in these circumstances, or these things coming at me, they're a lot, they're too much. Then you know what to do, or you realize there's a problem. You know what they say, a problem known is half solved. So at least you're halfway there. But you cannot if you do not stop to check in with yourself. Now, the next thing that we need to do, or we must learn to do when we are beginning to prioritize ourselves, is setting boundaries. And this is especially hard if you have lived your life, putting other people first, and then literally you want to move the goalpost in between, in the middle of the game somewhat. Yeah, it's hard. You think, what are they going to think? Some of us question and doubt ourselves, and we're thinking, who do I think I am that I'm telling somebody you can't? It's hard. This is maybe one of the hardest things to do in the process of putting yourself first, is setting boundaries. But setting boundaries need to be done. Like learning to tell somebody, I can't deal with that right now. My plate is too full. Telling your children, mommy needs to take a nap. I'm going to, those things can be hard. And I think setting boundaries is most especially, I'm sorry, maybe it's because I'm a mother, but when you're dealing with children, these little faces or with teary eyes or stuff, and you have boundaries in place and they have crossed that boundary, it's very easy to just wave it aside and say, oh, they need me. They would always need you, or you would always seem like they need you, but you need you. And you setting boundaries is for you to protect yourself in such a way that even when they need you in 10 years time, or that you're not always there. I mean, there's some things we don't have control over, but the ones that we have control over, let us do it. Because when you set boundaries, it limits how people push you to the wall. It limits how people test your patience. And in the process of when someone is pushing you to the wall or testing your patience, a lot of times you snap. When you lose your cool, you're just a grumpy old fella, that sort of thing. But when you set boundaries, it reduces the chances of them pushing you to that edge where you have to be that grouch or that grump or that moody person. I don't know. Let me paint a scenario, because this happens a lot. You see women, sorry, I'm using women because they're men who also, need to learn to prioritize themselves. But I honestly find that men know how to do a better job of this, in maintaining their sanity than a lot of women do. But you meet a lot of people who are so committed to looking after their younger ones or their children or their parents. And because they are expending so much of themselves, they're just a right mess. Their attitude is wrong. They're just really horrible to be around because they're burnt out. They're giving what they no longer have. Do you know that scenario? Can you see that picture? Is there someone that were you once like that, or are you currently like that? And you actually don't even love yourself anymore, but you keep going. And now you don't want to be that person. Set boundaries. So yeah, it brings you to a place of self-love. The next thing you must learn to do for yourself is establishing healthy routines. So in the process of taking time out to setting boundaries and finding yourself, discovering yourself, you start to see yourself in a better light. You start to see your patterns, identify where you can do better. You might need to basically clear out the toxins, the junk, shed off the weights. And when I say weights, the physical weights, mental weights, emotional weights, clear out the baggage. In the process of setting healthy routines for yourself, you establish better sleeping patterns. You learn how to eat better, exercising, better sleep patterns, and simply just loving yourself. There are other aspects. They're so varied. I mean, I couldn't touch it all because it's really different for each and every one of us. But across the board, it is always a good idea for you to establish healthy routines for yourself. And that's a very important way to get on this journey of prioritizing yourself. And last but not the least, you need to learn how to speak up. You need to find your voice. Now, speaking up for yourself is not what I described earlier on, which is lashing out when you're pushed to the wall. No, in a place of sanity, in the beginning of something, speak up for yourself. Find your voice. You learn how to express yourself in every situation. You learn how to ask questions to gain clarity. And then most especially, which is really important, you learn how to ask for help. That's really important. Learning that I don't have to do this by myself, or I'm not even able to do this by myself, or I'm not even able to do it at all. You can't express that if you haven't found your voice. So you must find your voice, learn to speak up. And even though this is the last point I'll be discussing today, I think it's almost one of the most important factors, because once you learn how to speak up for yourself, you find that you get to a point where you would no longer settle for less. Anything that is not befitting for you or anything that is not serving you, you would not allow it. It's not going to be able to thrive because you have found your voice. You have, as opposed to bottling it up and being discontent somewhere down deep in the pits of your stomach. No, when you have a voice, you say it out loud. You say, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't think I can do this. I mean, honestly, it is liberating for me. I find that there are times when my kids are trying to do something and I'm able to say, you know what, not now. I can't. It's not an emergency. It's not life-threatening. Not now. I just need to take a nap. I need to do this for myself. I need to just be alone. And it's working for me. So I would advise that we all start to input the steps in our lives, because the bottom line of what we're trying to say, this whole topic in a nutshell is like the oxygen mask metaphor. I mean, if you've ever boarded a plane and the flight attendants start to tell you, you know, they're going to give you that introduction and they'll tell you, in the case of any emergency, you want to wear your oxygen mask first before you help another. They will tell you clearly, even if you're with children, wear yours first. Because what happens when you don't wear yours is in a situation of turbulence or, you know, whatever that scenario is, if you don't wear your own oxygen mask and you are going to lose oxygen, you are going to, as we said, deplete. You are going to off yourself. And yeah, so this is similar to the oxygen mask metaphor or analogy. You need to save yourself and you must love yourself before you can love another. Aside from that, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give what you don't have. So when you get to the point where you don't even know yourself, therefore, I mean, you can't love what you don't know, you know. So when you don't love yourself really and truly, how can you love another? This is really important. We must today learn how to start prioritizing ourselves, putting ourselves first, creating balances. We're not saying swing from one end of the pendulum to another. No, life is about balance, and this is us just saying this is yet another balance that we must come to. This is a balance that we must find a middle ground that works for us as we put ourselves into consideration as much as we put other people. And that will be the end of this topic for today. Now, if you have not liked this video, please press the like button. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Until next time, I remain your reinventing buddy, Elsie. Bye.